So go ahead, Kev. All right, so first thing we want to say is this is weird. This is a weird time. It's okay to acknowledge with your scouts and with everybody that this is weird. Ask how they're doing. Be sympathetic to what's going on, but don't pretend that everything's normal, because it's not. The BSA has gone through some big seismic shifts before. One thing that we all have to remember is that we've been, as a country, through some big seismic shifts in the past. Things like World War or Great Depression. And we have always soldiered through and been the helpers in the end. The helpers in these kinds of situations. So it's okay. It's okay that we're going through this. We'll figure it out. Scouting has always been resilient. Hey, Kev, you want to advance the slides? Thanks. All right. So the mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people for the ethical, to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling in them the values of the Scout oath and law. This has not changed. We are still seeking to accomplish this. And one thing we have to keep in mind during everything that's going on is that this hasn't changed. The challenge is we need to come up with new ways to complete this mission. So this is what we're doing right now. We're learning new ways to complete this mission digitally during this time. And so keep that in the forefront of all your mind when you're struggling with new technology or you're struggling with connecting with your scouts. What's the whole point of it all? And keep reminding yourself that and going back to it. Now, with that being said, we're going to go back to the nuts and bolts of this. And I think Ez is going to take over now.
It's my turn. A couple things for why this training and what we hope to get out of this. Be advised that all scouting rules still do apply during virtual meetings. So that means that you need to maintain your YPT, 2 deep leadership, whether it's 2 people on the stream when you are doing these things, or 1 on the stream, an adult in the background. The point is there are 2 adults. Best practice is to have 2 on the stream. It's easier to control. The other thing you need to keep in mind is the cyber chip. You need to make sure that the cyber chip is up to date on all the scouts. The good thing is it's one of those things that has to be renewed every year. So before you even start, maybe your first meeting with your troop or your patrol is to do your cyber chip. As we had said earlier, Illinois is a state that is a dual consent for recording. So best practice, don't record. We're always with children. So not recording the meetings might be the best practice to have. Remember, there is a feature on here to raise your hand. I believe it's in your chat button somewhere. So if there is something you want us to clarify or you have a question throughout this thing, just go ahead and hit that hand raise. One of us will find you and say, hey, hold on, someone's got a question. So something to keep in mind. If you can't find it, we'll show you where it is in a bit. A couple of reasons why we figured this is a good idea is the first and foremost, your committee meetings. I know a lot of troops and committees had to be canceled when all this went into effect. So before you can even do any of this, meeting with your committee might be the best place to start. And also to practice. You want to practice before you put it out with the kids. You have to understand that these kids, this is what they do. They know how to work these tools. There might be some nuts and bolts in there that they might not get so far, but all in all, they're very comfortable with technology. So practicing with your committee might be the best move first, and which goes on to connecting with your troops and your patrols. We want them to keep scouting. We don't want to lose these kids while we are in our little bubble. So something to keep in mind as well. And also know that this tool has been around for quite some time. Lots of businesses have been using them. So I think the scouts need to start using that as well. So with that being said, let's get on to some ideas of what you can do with your virtual tool. Go ahead, Angie.
All right. So what can you do? You can do digital campfires. That's where you all get on and you have programs made up. You can do skits. You can do songs. You can do storytelling. You can do all kinds of fun stuff in front of a digital campfire. You can do committee meetings. You can do PLC meetings. You can do boards of review. You can even now do Scoutmaster conferences. Originally, the rules were that you were not allowed to do a Scoutmaster conference digitally, but they have lifted that right now so that they can still be done. Again, make sure YPT, you're not alone one-on-one with a kid. So you do need to have another adult, whether it's assistant Scoutmaster or someone else, but they can be done that way. You can complete rank requirements. You can do a den meeting. You could have an interview with an official because some of the adventures and some of the merit badges require that they talk with an elected official. You could have special guests come and show a talent. You could do Nova and Supernova counseling. You can do merit badges, and you can even connect with a commissioner and talk about what your concerns are or if you need help with something. So there are lots of really cool ways that you can use this technology to still be connecting with your scouts and have your scouts connect with each other, because really that's pretty important too. All right, so if you're going to be working on rank, merit badge, even Cub Scout level, focus on the verbs of the requirement. So look at explain and discuss, show and demonstrate. Those are all kind of the language that you see in their books. Really think about that, and the explain and the discuss are things that really lend themselves to this technology. Show and demonstrate could be a lot harder. Not to say it can't be done, but some things, such as we had a discussion earlier, axes and knives, those are not something that you really can do in this kind of situation. So that would be something that you would want to hold off and do in person. But there are a lot of things, especially ones that say explain or discuss, that you can do over this medium. And then as far as the EDGE method, that's kind of what we were just talking about: explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable. The EDGE method, you can do most steps of that here in this virtual setting, but the guide where you're helping them, again, that's a little bit harder when it's something like knots or knives. So the other things might lend themselves a little bit better. All right, and finally, sharing your meeting. If you're going to share your meeting digitally, make sure you're thinking through all of the steps for it, because it's a little more complicated. Make sure you send the communication with links, how to join and how to download and how to test. Especially if this is new for you, spend lots of time just testing it. Esmeralda and Kevin and I have spent the last several days running it all through its paces to try and figure things out and the best ways to present things through this medium. And even when we think we have it, we still run into hiccups. So test it, test it, test it, so it's not frustrating for everyone. And then communicate when you are using it. Make sure that you're communicating it to all of the people who are going to be using it. And make sure you consider whether all of your scouts have access to the program that you're using. We don't want to leave scouts out because they don't have the appropriate equipment. This software does work on phones and iPads, but not as well as the desktop. So make sure you really consider, can everybody use it? Are you leaving anyone out? And if you are leaving anyone out, is there a way that you can include them? Those are some important things we need to think about. Kevin?
Yep. Alrighty. So now let's talk a little bit about the software and the interface. Let me find Angie. Make her go away. So one of the cool things about one of the things that we want to talk about really is Zoom itself. There's plenty of options out there. So there's Google Hangouts, there's Google Classroom, Discord servers, and GoToMeeting and JoinMe, and a whole bunch of different solutions. We're not saying that Zoom is the only one to use. We just, from our experience and from some of the experiences from other councils, this is the one that seems to be the simplest or most straightforward to be able to use and offer some of the functions that some units may want to add in there. So first of all, one person in your unit needs to have a Zoom account, and that can definitely be a free account. Free account is limited to 100 participants, which is probably more than adequate for everybody. Really, after about 20 people on the chat, it may become a little bit difficult to manage and control. So once we're in there, let me go back to my screen share here. Once you have the account set up, you're going to go through the process of setting up a meeting. And it's really as simple as picking a date and time, making sure you allow a duration long enough to go through. The free account right now is limited to 40 minutes. However, the free account is limited to 40 minutes. And I just did, there's many of us who've noticed that they're not enforcing that. I know at least one patrol, is Buck in here. He had a meeting tonight. He said that the 40-minute limit was lifted for him. So you definitely don't need to pay for the add-on service to get most of the functionality out of it. But you want to schedule your meeting, a couple options in here that you can do is enable a waiting room. That was a way that we had you guys join. So it allowed the host and the co-host to kind of come in and make sure we were ready to go before we had everybody jump in. And then we also enable mute on participant, or mute you guys as you walked into the meeting. So let's see, a couple of things. I'm going to show you some of the settings, and then as we go through it, it'll kind of make sense that the settings are discrete to the account holder, not to the actual meeting itself. But on your web page is where you get to the settings, and there's a handful of sections where you can subsections go into. So if we look at the in basic setting or in meeting basics, we enabled a feature here called co-hosts, and that allowed me to be the host and have Angie and Esmeralda be the co-host. And as co-host, what they're doing is looking at the chat, kind of making sure if there's a question there or if somebody's having problems. In the case when they were talking, it allowed myself or somebody else to be able to run a slideshow. It gives a couple people the ability to manage the meeting. There's a function here I will talk about a little bit later. There's an option to put an attendee on hold. That's a great function when you're having a remote board review. You can have the discussion with the scout and then say, okay, hold on a second, we're going to put you on hold. Put them on hold, they go back to a blank screen, and you can have that discussion and then bring them back in to give them the answer. There's an option here to have everybody screen share or not. We've enabled that, so we're going to test that out in a couple of minutes so you guys can see what the functionality is from from a participant point of view. Also, I know Melissa.
Quick, can you go back and show where the co-host is for the free version?
Oh, so once I get out of the slides, I can show the interface exactly how to get to this, but it's in the settings. In the web page, there's a personal setting or personal options, and then under settings, as you click settings, you go in and scroll down through the page. Co-host is there's a whole bunch of options here. You can scroll to your heart's content to find settings, but I'll show that live in a couple seconds. Breakout rooms, there was some questions about breakout rooms. Sorry, advanced rooms. Breakout rooms, that's nice. We're going to probably use that for a future upcoming roundtable, but that might be an easy way to do a small patrol corners type breakout. And so that's an option there within the settings. I think, so we had enable waiting rooms. And then breakout rooms. Okay, I think I'm done with the slides. So let me jump into some of the interaction. So right now you may be looking at a gallery view or a speaker view, but as a presenter, if I'm talking here and want to have everybody focus their attention on myself, I can go in and say, focus on me. Talk, look at my camera, have my focus be on everybody's computer or everybody's interface. It's really good to be able to keep everybody's concentration on what's happening. If everybody's mic was open as somebody made a noise somewhere, that screen might flip over to that channel or to whoever's opening up their mic. Checking my notes. This is a really good time to try something out. Everybody is muted. So right now, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of press your space bar. For most of you, it should unmute you temporarily, so you can quickly chime in and say, hey, I'm here, or ask a question. So go ahead and do that.
Hello.
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 And I think somebody pointed out earlier on the phones, it might be all the way to the left or to the right. You have to scroll your sliding bar.
On the left.
Oh, I'm here.
The beans are left at the table. Nobody.
So that's a nice trick to be able to allow and show everybody that they can quickly ask or answer a question without having to fumble with clicking on the mute button on the screen. We've already looked at the chat feature, that function. That chat function not only has the ability to chat to everybody, but you can chat to an individual person. You can send a private message to a single person. A couple things about the chat we found out today. As we record the meeting, the Zoom chat actually gets saved. And not only does it save the public chat, but it saves all those private chats as well. So just something you might want to mention to everybody if you're going to choose to save the chat log. We did it really just to keep track of who's here, so we can mark it down as for our meeting notes of reference. We already kind of showed you the spotlight, so I can bring anybody's attention. So I'm going to pick on Mr. Schmelzer here. I'm going to make him the spotlight, even though he's not talking. So everybody should be seeing Steve. If that's correct, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or a clap. All right, good. All right, so let me.
And that reaction is at the bottom of your screen where it says reactions, where you should be able to find it, the thumbs up or the clap.
That was definitely the next thing I was going to point out. So the reaction on your meeting toolbar is a good way to get a visual confirmation from people that they're following along or still in it. We talked a little bit earlier about the background feature, the nice beach scene that Esmeralda is on and things like that. Let me go ahead and open my interface. Hold on a second, let me get to there. In screen share. So you should be seeing my web browser. If I scroll down, we'll quickly go back to that settings portion here. When I logged into Zoom.
Kev, we just see you.
Hey, look at that. I got to hit the share button, huh? Now do you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So once you log into the web page, over here on the right-hand side is my icon. I can click this, click on my name, and I get my personal and this account settings pretty much. So scheduling a meeting is as simple as going to the meeting tab and click schedule new meeting. But there was a question about the settings option. In settings, you can see here as I scroll through this, there is a bunch of different options. These settings are not meeting specific, they're account specific. So there was a meeting that we had earlier in the week that we didn't have the breakout rooms. I had to go dive and figure out where that setting was. And then we figured out that there was a option that was causing the breakout rooms not to be showing up even though I had it enabled. So there's a little bit of playing reading it, looking into the settings to see what's available. but we were talking about the background settings, right? So I'm going to try to do, let's see, screen share this other screen. And this might be a little wonky. You guys should see a desktop and things like that. Is that correct? Yes? Okay. So on my toolbar, my toolbar is at the top of the screen here. If I go to this video option in my dropdown, I have the option to do virtual backgrounds. So it comes with a couple different graphics, so I can quickly choose that and pop that in. You can also have the option to upload your own pictures. So that's one of the fun features that people are looking for. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's talk about polls. Here's a simple feature. Maybe it might be helpful at a committee meeting or for a patrol meeting. I'm going to launch a poll here, and so you should see in your chat bar at the bottom, or I'm sorry, your meeting bar at the bottom, there's an active poll. You should be able to click and respond to that. Give that about 20 seconds or so for people to respond. I see about 8 or 9 people, 7 people so far. 53% were failing on participation here, just so you guys know. But okay, that's enough. I'm gonna hit end here so I can see, and I'm gonna hit share and show the results. So if you're having a question about where should we be planning our next event next month, you can do something like this. That setting to enable polls, let me go back to screen sharing. That is an option in your meeting itself. We found that it's best to work or to have the poll set up prior to starting your meeting. It does kind of work if you're doing it in the middle of the meeting, but it's a little bit of a flaky or not reliable solution. But in the meeting setting, once you create it, at the bottom you can pull up the option for polls. You can hit add, and as simple as entering a question here, and then answers, you have the option for single and multiple choice. So it's a really basic function, but it might be useful for some of your meetings. So let's talk about breakout rooms. I think that's a hot topic item. I'm going to enable my breakout rooms. I'm going to do 2 rooms. You have the ability to do name your rooms as well as assign co-hosts into each room. So in a second here, I'm going to open the rooms. You should see a join option. In this case, we kind of just left it wide open to randomly assign people to each room, but you can definitely go in and say, okay, I want this person into breakout room 1, I want this person in breakout room 2, and kind of assign between there. So we're going to do this for about 20 or 30, 40 seconds, and then we'll bring back everybody here and kind of open the floor for some questions. Okay, so go ahead and click your join.
So this is definitely something that we're looking at for a possible virtual roundtable. So something to keep in mind. And then what happens is you can set it for a while. On the bottom right-hand corner, it says leave the breakout room. If you ever leave a breakout room before the end of a session, it takes you back to the original session. Or the host can actually say, hey, you've got, 4.
So if you were going to do this for roundtable, could you assign on the fly?
Yeah, we can ask ahead of time, like which room you'd like to be in, or we can have a little vote thing going on. Everyone do a thumbs up that wants to go to this room or whatever. And he can do it on the fly and put people into rooms.
Okay.
And like you can see, Kevin just popped in, so he can bounce back and forth between
Alrighty. Everybody looks like they're back here. Cool. So yeah, I think as Angie were pointing out that the breakout rooms, you can, I think there was one question in there that, can you assign them on the fly? Yes, but definitely. You know, one option that we heard from another council was to have you rename yourself in the chat window. So if you pull up your chat, I'm sorry, in the participant window, if you pull up the participant, you hover over your cursor. Let me go ahead and pull that up for you guys. Hold on a second. If you hover over your, pull up the participant panel, as you hover over, you can rename yourself and say, let's say I'm Kevin and I want to go to the Cub session. So then it shows up there. So if somebody was, or
Kevin, we don't see that screen.
Oh, you know what? That's probably a setting. Yeah. Okay, I'll have to grab some screen grabs of that later to be able to share. It's probably a function in the software not to loop itself back in. But if you follow along in the participant window, as you hover over your name, you should have the option to do more and have that fly out to be able to change or rename yourself. That's kind of handy thing too, if you're going to do it with your scouts, to make sure you know, have them use their real names as opposed to their Discord gamer tag or whatever they feel like making a name up for the day is. Let me just look through my notes here. Yeah, so what kind of questions, we're going to have some time here to experiment, but what kind of questions do you guys have? What else do you want to see? What else can I try to show you?
Hey, Kevin, do you know if there's a difference between the web app and the Google extension app as far as functionality goes? Because there's a lot of stuff you're talking about that I just can't seem to be able to do.
And you're on a computer itself?
Yeah, I'm on a laptop with
Okay.
the Chrome extension instead of
Gotcha.
the.
That might be the case. Every time I've used Zoom, I've installed the application and ran it from there. I can definitely try that out later and see.
Is there a simpler application, or is it? Because I thought it was either you use it in the browser window or you install like a Chrome extension.
Or there's an application that you can install as well too. So there's a lot of different ways, and so our mileage may vary depending on what you're using. Earlier we heard somebody say that the phone app is a little wonky to use, and I think that might be depending on iOS or Android. Somebody I think earlier today, just in the chat now, said the phone app seems to be organized pretty well. So that's one of those things where if you're going to try to do this with your scouts, I would strongly suggest to do this with a couple leaders first, and kind of figure out what is the best use or best working scenario for you guys. Any other questions?
Yeah, that co-host, I'm in my account right now with the settings, and that co-host is not in my settings at all. I got the basic account. I was wondering how to get my senior patrol leader on board to give the pass over control over to him once the meeting starts.
That's a good thing. You know, let me look into that as we break into the next thing, and I'll follow back with you, Mark.
Okay.
Okay. That might be an option for the advanced plan, but I rather than looking it up right now, I'll look in a couple of moments. Any other questions? Anything else we want to see? Do you want me to try another breakout room?
Well, one comment I want to make for anybody that's using a phone or a tablet-based version, like an iPad or an Android tablets, if you have your video turned on, please leave your device on a counter or on your desk, because that constant motion, I had a scout in one of my sessions, she was using it and walking around, and it gets extremely distracting. So if you are using a mobile device and have video turned on, please keep that stable, because it really, it causes a very interesting experience.
At this point, since somebody else is really great, who was talking? You can either raise your hand or catch us in the chat. We can mention to you. Mark, I'm going to make you a co-host right now so you can see what the functionality is, the added things.
I think
so
Nick might want to, he keeps giving me an icon of a thumbs up. I'm not sure if he's trying to raise his hand. Nick?
Nope, I'm good. I was just testing out the different features.
Okay, just making sure.
All right, don't go anywhere. I'm going to leave this meeting and try opening it in the actually application that I downloaded just now. So
Okay, so we're all going to leave the meeting to play
No,
a
just
prank.
me.
Oh, I'm just joking.
Oh, yeah.
I gotcha.
Nice.
We'll be here.
Thanks, Kevin. Be nice.
Trying to be funny. Melissa, I know you were talking about the breakout rooms earlier. Does that make sense? Do you have additional questions about that?
Yeah, it looked good. So you're suggesting, you said rename yourself. So you give yourself like a new alias based on which one?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the options that I saw in one of the other councils, and they had a similar video that they found. You know, we had them rename to be what breakout room that they wanted to move to. Made it easier on the host to be able to drag and drop them in.
And those polls that you pre-created, are you able to see? I mean, we could all see the end result that was 100% yes. Can you see individual votes or only the end result?
You know, that's a good question. I think I picked both of them to be anonymous. So I did not look at that. I have not looked to see if that's where I see those answers. It didn't come up on the screen right here, but it might be elsewhere. So
okay,
that I can look into also and find out.
Looks like Nick has a question.
Hey guys, thanks. So noticed recently that lots of kids are getting onto Facebook Messenger for kids. My kids' friends are all connecting with my kids, but one of my kids' friends, their parents connected me to them over that, and so I, figured out on my own how to block the ability for that scout to message me. But I just wasn't sure if you had guidance on that, if that was the right action, if you guys have heard of that, or just want to talk about that.
Yeah, I actually have had the same thing. I've had several scouts who have tried to connect through Facebook Messenger, and we're going to talk about that soon. But you absolutely can't have a one-on-one conversation with a scout. So even in this format, you always have to have 2 adult leaders present, and in other formats as well. So if a parent is in with you on the chat, then you can talk with the scout, but never ever one-on-one. And that is something I've had to reiterate several times to scout parents, including Cubs and BSA level.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be the same rule as like if you're doing a merit badge, if there were 2 scouts and 1 adult, would that work too?
In this case, you really should have 2 adults for contacting one-on-one. Even in this, if you've got like 20 kids, you still should have 2 adults, 2 leader adults. And if you're one-on-one with a kid, like that kid's parent can be there and count as the second adult. But as soon as you put another kid in there that's not that parent's child, you need to have another adult leader there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay, and that's just YPT rules. You just imagine if you were face-to-face with the kids, you follow the same YPT rules that you would if you were in person and digitally, same thing. And we're gonna send you at the end, we're gonna send you some links that really have it in writing from National so that you can say, because and I've had adults argue with me over this, but once you say, here, it says right here in this document, we have to follow it this way. That's a good question, thank you. there anything else you guys want to play with before we keep going? Or have a question about?
Hand raised, but no one was paying attention to it. So.
Oh, hi.
There it is.
What's up, Greg?
All right, so I did figure out, because using just the Google Chrome extension, there is a lot less functionality than what you were talking about. So that the virtual background thing doesn't really show up. You really have to click on participants to be able to see like raising the hand or any of the other stuff. The reactions button doesn't show up. The record option doesn't show up. So there's just a lot of things in here that are in the app that if you download it and install it that aren't in the Chrome extension. So.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
Just related to the YPT discussion we had, are we going to talk about user management and how you invite scouts into the meetings?
Yes.
Without having, okay.
Yeah, the simple answer to that is really, it goes back to making sure your meeting information, how would you send out that information currently? Are you sending it to the parents? Are you also sending it to the youth? Make it as widely known as possible how to spread the word about your meeting. A lot of units will do a email blast or an email from the Scoutmaster or one of the ASMs. So that would be probably the easiest way to do it. Yes, there are some hurdles to get through if some younger Scouts don't have their own email, or if you don't have it in your system. But that's where send it out to the parents and have the parents help get it set up.
And remember, if you're emailing to a scout, you need to email to the parent too, not email to the scout directly.
And if this is going to be used, make sure you do send it out to the parents to get it set up beforehand and not the day of, because sometimes you might have to go over some hurdles with the way things are going with everyone being on the internet. And we'll talk more about that as we go on.
Just circling back to that Facebook Messenger thing, topic. Katie pointed out that after a chat's happening, that it'll send the transcript to the parents of the child as to what has occurred. So that's a good feature too. Go ahead.
So just real quick on that, I mean, my concern was obviously it just seemed like a one-on-one contact. So
yeah, I would be uncomfortable doing it.
Yeah, when in doubt, I mean, I've received a couple phone texts from Scouts about mirror badges, and when in doubt, I copy that, create a new message back, and include the parent or another leader, and start a new chat with that from that point of view. And you'll find I do this often with work. Sometimes somebody replies just to you and not everybody. You kind of have to make sure you're adamant about bringing that group back in and have that discussion.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. That's good guidance. Thank you.
So if we want to move on, Angie, I think it's your turn to pick up.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's see. The next part we're going to talk about is advancement guidelines. So we're going to use, hopefully, some of you are going to use this with your Scouts and start working on rank advancements or rank requirements. When you're doing that, make sure that you have an adult assigned as a co-host or is in the conversation, not just for YPT, but also because they can be your helpers. So right now we're tag teaming and Kevin and I, so when one of us is talking, now someone else is monitoring the chat. We're making sure you guys have been really great about not unmuting yourself because it's really easy to do accidentally. And then we hear like people's dogs and little kids in the background. Kids in particular, that's going to be a lot harder for them to remember. So you have a co-host in there who's able to mute things as they come up. That's super helpful. Also, make sure you're taking attendance. So we asked that everyone sign in and tell me what unit you're from because we get to report this to National as we're meeting with you. But you'll need to keep attendance for your meeting because it is a meeting. You can start a spreadsheet, which I believe Kevin has a slide for. You can start a spreadsheet to track requirements as they're being done. This is a useful reference and easier to type into as you're going than maybe opening Scout Book and checking things off. But you could do this to track everything as you're going during your meeting. But you can also use Scoutbook. Just make sure that you're keeping track of who was there and who was accomplishing what, so that you can go in and when we're able to meet in person again, you can fill in their books. Because Scoutbook is great and we love it, but not all units use it, and it's still really motivating for the kid to see it in their book. We want to remind you that you are not allowed to make modifications to the requirements, even with what's going on right now and we're doing everything digitally. You cannot change how they are written because of the circumstances. So if it says they have to physically do something, they have to physically do it. You can't go around it. So that's gonna take some creativity for some things. Some of the stuff we can still do. Some of it's gonna have to wait till we can meet in person again. Some of it's gonna require some imagination, but they still have to do the requirements as written. Later on, we'll show you a document that came from National that has a couple changes that are a couple changes to requirements that you'll be able to see. And I'm seeing they can physically do it and video it, yes, but especially at the stuff like pocket knives or axes, those can get a little tricky to teach if the parent is not a leader that has familiarity with it. We want to make sure that those things are still being taught appropriately. So yes, they can absolutely physically do it and video it and share it, but use your best judgment and make sure that you're not changing any of the requirements. So again, we talked about the EDGE method, which we're gonna hit home several times. Like we said before, it's easy to explain here, it's easy to demonstrate easy here, but it can be a little bit more difficult to guide depending on the topic. So make sure you're really considering that when you're doing the advancements with the kids. And then finally, we have some video segments that were brought to our attention that are available on YouTube, and Kevin's gonna pull them up. There are, for the Scouts BSA level, there's a gentleman who made some wonderful videos for each and every Scouts BSA rank requirement. So this might be something that you can share in groups or like perhaps to your new patrol and show them. We don't have an audio on this, but it's a whole video on what can be done, what's required, and some ideas on how to get them done. Those will be shared, no worries. Those will be shared at the end. We're gonna give you the whole slideshow is gonna be made available, and all the links and all the documents are gonna be with it. And then I think it's Ez's turn.
My turn. So etiquette and best practices. As we've been talking throughout this session, you've heard a few things, but I wanted to make sure we have a few things to hit home. First things first, audio issues. You've been hearing a couple of people have been breaking out. To lessen some of the audio shutter, turn off your video. That might actually help in a few instances. If you're using a computer microphone, audio might be choppy when you're typing. In my case, with my laptop, my speakers are very, very close to my keyboard. So if my audio is on and I'm trying to type something, that can also interrupt. Mute yourself if there is any ambient noise. Especially if you have small children, a clock chiming, a dog barking, at least that way a lot of that ambient noise is not distracted to other participants in our sessions. As Earl said earlier, if you're on video, put it on a stable surface. A lot of that moving around can actually cause people to have motion sickness. Don't want to have that. Also to make sure that what is behind you. A lot of times we've seen people that they themselves might be okay, but maybe family members from behind them may not be appropriately dressed or undressed, I should say. So please be very careful what's behind you, as well as what you are wearing. Be careful if you're wearing a shirt that has any symbols on it or anything that is appropriate for Scouts. Careful, that's why Scout uniforms are the best things to use. Feel free to hide your videos. We will not be offended. Trust me, no one will be offended. Careful what you are wearing, as I said before. Use a chat room to ask questions during a presentation. That is a very helpful tool because less people can come in unless we're asking you to come in and chime into some information. Wi-Fi can be spotty. If you plug into the modem or the router directly, you may have better results. With everybody being on the internet and Wi-Fi, sometimes if you're in close proximities with your neighbors, this is one thing Greg and I have been dealing with today was I kept getting kicked off my internet because we were on the same channel with a lot of our close neighbors. So make sure that you're on a pretty good frequency or a pretty good channel to make sure that you're not going to be kicked out in the middle of a session, especially if you're the host. So with that being said, I think Angie has some resources to share with you.
Okay, so I'm muted. Am I muted? Do you hear me?
We hear you.
You're good.
Okay. Okay, so scouting is still happening. Scouting is still going. Make sure you try, get out of your comfort zone, adjust. Even if something doesn't go well the first time, you're learning and you're learning how to make it better the next time. So make sure that you're giving it your best shot. You know, we teach the Cubs that you try your best, just what we expect out of everybody. And then when you do hit on something that works really well, make sure you share it. Our Facebook pages are lovely places to share it. Share it with us, and then we're also sharing with National because they're also trying to scramble and come up with new programs. So make sure you are talking to us and sharing with everybody, and we can all learn and go to good places. And then let's see. Think outside of the box and remember in everything that we do, it's coming back to the scouting, the whole purpose of scouting, and keep that in mind in everything we do. Also, and go ahead and advance it, thank you. These are the resources that you guys should look very, very closely at. You need to look at the social media guideline, and that kind of is from, well, that is from National and outlines a lot of these things that we were talking about, what you can and can't do, and you should be very familiar with it. The other thing that by now you should all know is the Guide to Safe Scouting. That's going to give you a whole lot of information. If it counts for in-person, it counts for online. And then finally, what just appeared today, we have the Rainbow Council Scouting at Home, which I see Kevin added. In the meantime, this is a new page that just appeared this afternoon. It has all kinds of amazing stuff on it, including the council-wide roundtable that just happened, information that is coming up about different options you can use for conferencing, and all kinds of neat stuff. So make sure that you check it out and you forward it to all the other leaders in your group. And I think, let's see, oh, yep. So this is the question and answers regarding from National on the changes. We talked about it earlier. These are things that National has said, okay, you can modify this and you can make this change. You can't make this change. So make sure that you read it before you continue scouting. Any other questions?
I think this would be a good time to answer questions, and if anybody wants to play and try some things out, try to share a document if you'd like, something that, burning question. Anything. Anybody want to share?
Nothing.
Don't be shy. I'll start dancing.
I have a question.
What's your question?
I know most of the scouts probably are using Chromebooks because that's what the schools are giving out or providing to them. How well does this particular app work on Chromebooks? And is there an app on Chromebook that they can use that would be useful as well.
Funny you should say that. Greg, you were the one dealing with Lorenzo's Chromebook today. Can you answer that?
Yes, I was actually just about to jump in and answer that exact reason. So basically, his was a little bit of a pain to set up, and that was only because because of the restrictions that we have. So I ended up. How did we end up doing it? I already forgot. I was half asleep. But basically, we were able to. I had to sign into it and download the Chrome extension, and the Chrome extension does work as long as he's over 13, so he's not quite as restricted as younger kids are. But it was able to work with his account on his Chromebook through the extension. But I don't think he could create a meeting. He could only join a meeting, which is fine for what we want to do. But once we got that set up, it was a little bit fiddly to make sure video and audio were working right, but we got it. We were able to play with it, and within maybe a half hour, an hour, get everything working. So the short answer is yes, it'll work with the Chromebook.
Nick also had a question. Nick?
Hey, sorry, it takes me a second to unmute. So my question was, do you guys have any experience dealing with hearing impaired parents in this situation?
There is a closed captioning option in the account. However, the closed captioning requires another user to type in captioning as it's happening, or the words as it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I have not seen it in use in here, but there is a functionality for it, and I don't have real world experience.
Okay,
short of
thank
that.
you.
You might want to ask them if there's a particular app that they are able to accommodate their hearing needs with. So they might have experience with something that works rather well for them, and you might want to take that into consideration. And to go along with what Kathleen posted, yes, your area, your schools might use an app already, or a system already that works best for them, in which case we really go for it, try it, experiment with other adult leaders and see if you can get the hang of it before you start it with your scouts. I know in my area, most of the kids are using Zoom, so that's one of the ones we went with. And this seems to be what National is using, so that's kind of why we're using it too. But yeah, if Google works better for your kids and they're familiar with it, then do it that way.
Anybody want to share a screen? You can pick up a picture.
Good time to practice. Just be careful what's on your computer.
There you go.
There you go. That's nice.
Now to get out of this, at the very top, we'll give you a little bar that says stop sharing. There it is.
Go. Anyone else want to try? This is probably the trickiest part. We were in a meeting with National, and the hosts did not know how to bring up the screen. It was really bad. It was really bad.
Anybody need clarification for anything?
Nice. Steve's got it.
All right, Steve.
Cool.
I want to follow up on a question from Mark earlier. That co-host option is a function of one of the paid plans. It's if you decide to do paid plan, it's $15 a month. If you're going to use it for a month or two, maybe that's something that your troop can afford, or your unit can afford, or ask around. Some of your unit leaders may have the service through a work account, and they may be able to help set that up too.
I actually just upgraded.
Yeah, so you can. I think that's probably the only feature that I saw so far. Now that you pointed out that
nice
is important.
Does anybody need any clarifications on anything?
Okay, so Bob, touch the top of your screen, and then you'll have the option to get back out.
Okay. Top of the screen.
Touch the top, and you should see view options. There you go.
There you go.
Good
You know
job.
what? I'm using my Android, and it's at the bottom where the
At the
share
bottom.
was.
Oh, good,
Okay.
good to know.
So,
Hey, you figured it out. That's awesome. Any other questions or concerns? We've got a whiteboard user.
Any other things that we can research and kind of put together a little presentation like this for other leaders on?
That was actually pretty cool. I like the whiteboard. That's neat. And it works great with my little stylus.
Everybody's liking the share screen.
Yeah, you guys are good at it. We've had a lot of people struggle with it. All right. Oh,
look at that.
So one of the things that we're going to do, Esmeralda and I are going to have a weekly Zoom meeting like this, where we're going to have a topic and we'll talk about something pertinent, something
Hold on,
for
Angie.
scouting.
Tom, at the very top, you want to go to stop screen share? All the way at the top. You have to take your mouse all because we still see your screen, Tom.
There you
There it
go. All right, so we're gonna do like a weekly mini roundtable where we're talking about something, and then we'll have time to just hang out and ask questions or chat and spend some time together since we can't get together. And then we will still do like a full once a month, a full roundtable. That is still gonna happen. But this way we get some contact with each other and get to talk a little bit. Yeah, that'd be fun. I'm seeing virtual campfire. That's probably gonna happen, not gonna lie. So that's probably gonna happen sometime in the near future.
Just if you came in halfway through this presentation, please make sure that you put your unit type and your unit number. And if you're from a different council, please make sure you let us know. That way we can keep track of who has been with us and sharing with us.
Bob, do you have your hand raised? Do you have a question?
yes, just where do you want us to put the troop name and number? I put my name up there as far as my screen name, but where do you want us? Is there a sign in there?
In the chat, just go ahead and drop it in the chat box. You see it?
Okay, hold on. Under participant.
Try the participant. You said you were on an Android?
Chats.
There you go, right
Chat.
there.
Yeah. And then we have a record. The chat can be saved and we can pull it and go through it later.
And what your position is too, please.
Thank you.
Oh, cool. Now I see how you can change names. That's another thing that you can't do in the with the web thing. So see, now I'm Star-Lord.
Anything else? You're welcome to play.
Any clarifications, questions about anything? Here. Bob, you're muted. Bob McMillan, you're muted.
That's no fair.
Okay, how's that better?
Better.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is directed to Kevin, if you don't mind. Hate to handle business all the time. Kevin, I need a short list of trainings that I can do at summer camp, or else if you want to come up and
just give me a call tomorrow or something like that. We can talk about it.
yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm at home, so.
Right, just something to think about. Hey, I am too. How about that?
Yeah.
I have toilet paper too, though.
I do too.
Well, yeah.
Don't say that too loud. Someone might rob you.
I'm sorry. That was probably too much information.
I was really wondering how much toilet paper is at camp. So in case we all run out, we can go there.
Hey, I live closest. I'm gonna beat y'all there.
I honestly can't tell you.
Has anyone else thought about installing a bidet?
That's
I
not
bought one.
going to happen.
Okay, I think we're going slightly off track here. So.
Yes, please. Save us, Kevin.
With that being said, I think if no one else has any questions.
Didn't that guy get arrested? No, really. I thought I heard that he was arrested for
abort mission.
for something. I mean, not having to do with selling those ShamWows.
Hey, Kev, you still recording?
I am. I just wanted to point out that I did it to Greg just a second ago. One of the features as a host is I can put people in waiting rooms, kind of put them on hold. We were talking about that for the board reviews. But that, it's kind of a good thing if you get somebody who's taking your discussion off track, kind of like, hey, time out for a couple seconds.
Oh, because I was doing that, huh? Thanks.
Yeah, no, I was just using you as an example.
It's like raising the scout sign without raising.
I'll be quiet, Kevin. Thanks for the hint.
Any other clarifications or questions? Or another feature that you want to play with, that you just want to try? This is the time to do it. As we said before, best time to do it is without the scouts in front of you or on the screen, because you want to make sure that you can handle the situation it arises, as Kevin so demonstrated.
Actually, that is another point too, because before, when I was just on the Google extension, you cannot change your name on the Google extension. You can only do that on the actual app. That's one of the reasons I wanted to try it.
Right. So make sure you're practicing with what tools you have to figure it out. So Kevin can flip and make you a co-host right now to anybody if they wanted to see the tools.
Yeah, and as a host, I have the ability to rename people. I think co-hosts, you probably have that functionality too. It would be under the more button.
Well, someone renamed me. Who was it?
I cannot.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Angelique.
No, Kev, we can't rename them.
Yes, we can.
You can?
I can.
I can't.
Okay, well, we can sit here all night looking at each other, or we could hit cancel and go on to the evening TV assignment, or take a shower, go to bed, do whatever you'd like.
Finish dinner.
There you go.
Hey, Kevin
All right,
Esmeralda and Angie, thank you very much for putting this together for us.
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much.
Very
Guys,
informative.
Thank you.
If you guys have any suggestions, please put them in the chat, because
Or message us later, or put them on Facebook, whatever. If you come up with some great ideas, let us know. We're listening. We want to hear what you got. And share
Okay.
it. Thanks,
How many
everybody.
days, Angie? Angie, how many days?
I'm wearing my uniform, but it's all business on the top.
I was gonna say,
pajamas on the bottom.
there we go. Yeah. Well, I was in a meeting last Wednesday with
That's
Kevin.
the case.
Yeah. No thing. Too much information.
Wait a minute. Are we supposed to be wearing pants right now?
Oh,
Okay,
good one.
I'm gonna
No.